Good morning, church. How you doing this morning? It is good to see you. Good to be with you. Hey, if you have a Bible with you or a Bible app on your phone, turn to John chapter 13. We've been in a series we kicked off last week called Masterclass, and these are lessons from the upper room. You know, the night before Jesus was crucified, he grabbed all of his closest disciples, put them in a room together, and he had this incredible special moment with them. They didn't really grasp the significance of it until a little ways down the road, but he knew what was going on in that night. And I would argue that these are some of the most powerful, incredible, just life-changing lessons that you'll find anywhere in the scriptures. I mean, it's all gas, no brakes, buckle up, here you go. And John 13 is where we are today. You could take this a chapter at a time. We've been taking it a little slower than that, just to try to savor and grab some of the tidbits that are in there. But you got to get, as you read this text that we're going to dive into today, you got to get in the holiday mode a little bit to really kind of understand this text. I know we're not in holiday mode right now. In fact, we are in that time of year this is the longest gap we get between holidays is right now. With President's Day in the rearview mirror, now we've got the longest stretch of the U.S. calendar without a holiday is this right now. 3 months till the next one. So we're not in holiday mode at all, but you got to get in that mindset when you read this text. Specifically, think Independence Day, okay? I don't know where holidays rank on your list, but for me, that's up there towards the top of the fun ones. That's a fun one to celebrate. Everybody's off. The weather's good. The family is together. You get pyrotechnics. I mean, how much more do you want in a holiday, right? It's summertime. It's 4th of July. It's apple pie. It's a good deal. It's a good deal. Get your Independence Day mind on. But as you read this text and think Independence Day, you have to try to imagine what it would be like to celebrate Independence Day when you were actually not free. Meaning you had an Independence Day in your past, July 4th in your past that you celebrated, and it became a national thing for you guys, and every July 4th you celebrated, except now another country has come in, and they reign and they rule. That's the Romans. So you have the Jews now celebrating their annual tradition of independence, but they're not actually free. And so there's a tension that's here because of that reality, because of that dynamic. Jesus his popularity up to this point has been edging towards just frenzied mode, because most people see him as the one who's going to make this whole independence problem go away, and he's going to finally throw off the tyranny of Rome, and he's going to set us up for a future as a nation. He's been pushing back that drama for most of his ministry. Anytime someone has tried to elevate him to a position of, hey, we want you to reign, we want you to rule, he's kind of said, shh, be quiet. It's not my time yet. It's not my time yet. It's not my time yet. Now we're at a point in the story where he's said, come on. Yes, that's right. Let's go. Here we go. And so the collision, if you were to be watching this like a movie, you would see two entities coming together at rapidly increasing speeds, and a collision is imminent. You've got the reigning, ruling Jewish authorities, and you've got Jesus, and they are coming for each other. You got Rome in the midst of that. It's a collision that's about to happen, and this is right before it all goes down. This night in the upper room, Jesus lays, I think, the DNA, as much as anywhere else in his teaching, he lays the DNA for what it is to be a follower of his. I mean, the kind of stuff that is the hallmark evidences of a disciple he talks about in this time with these guys. So that's why it's really important to us, because that's our thing here. Our game is to take next steps with Jesus. We are followers of Jesus around here. He's our guide. He is everything. That's who we worship. That's who we follow. So if you say this is the prime cuts of everything he's got for us, man, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. And he says to these guys in John 13, verse 33, my children, I'll be with you only a little longer. You'll look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I'm going, you cannot come. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, part of what's making this text, or part of what's making this moment so poignant, is that once again, Jesus is not doing what the public or even what his disciples are wanting him to do. He's not saying even what they're wanting him to say. They're not understanding fully where he's going as he's taking them. For example, just less than a week ago, triumphal entry, here comes Jesus. For the first time in his ministry, he's welcoming the praise and the focus as king. He's not pushing it away, which his disciples love. But he comes in riding on a donkey. And his disciples are like, dude, I mean, you drove the Pinto to the parade. Like, what are you doing? Like, how about a Lambo? How about something, how about a military tank? How about something that says something a little more powerful than a donkey? Like, we like it that you're finally showing initiative, but come on, what is this? Hold up, what are you doing here, Jesus? Or he gathers them into this upper room. This is the text we looked at last week. And he gets down on his hands and knees and washes their feet. Hold up, Jesus, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now, in this text we just read, he says, I'm leaving. What do you mean? What? We're here. Like, we've given up everything to follow you. You can't go anywhere. Like, you're stuck with us. We're going wherever you go. And then he says, a new command. You've spent, in fact, these disciples would remember multiple times where people said, hey, tell me how to love someone appropriately. Or tell me what the greatest commandment is. And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, right? We know that text. He heard Jesus say that multiple times to people. As this is what's most valuable. This is what's most important. A new commandment. He says, love one another as I have loved you. This is the new commandment. How is it new? There's nothing in the Old Testament that would say anything different than that love was valuable. But here's the most important piece of this. And here's why this has been so transformative. And here's why this was new. Jesus is redefining love. He's redefining from love as you would like to be loved to love as I have loved. That's the change. That's the newness. It's always been up to this point. Love your neighbor as yourself, which means love as you would like to be loved. Love someone like you would appreciate being loved. And Jesus says, no, here's a new definition. You love as I have loved you. Those are the key words, as I have loved you. The love that Jesus has for us is infinitely greater than love your neighbor as yourself. It's a new level of love. Have you ever heard somebody say that they are the picture of, and you fill in the blank, like if you were to look up blank in the dictionary, you'd find their picture. If you were to look up hard work in the dictionary, you'd find his picture, right? If you were to look up patience, this is what we say a lot of times of our sweet old moms or grandmas or whatever. If you were to look up patience in the dictionary, you would find her picture. Some of you have people in your life that you said, if you were to look up hot-headed in the dictionary, you would find their picture, right? What Jesus is doing with this concept of love is he's doing that very thing. He's saying, if you look up love, you will find this picture. If you look up love in the dictionary, you will find this picture. In fact, history tells us that this is actually true. And it's harder for us to grasp because we just say love. And our word for love is so umbrella that the things we really love and the things we kind of like are all mixed in between. Like we love tacos and we love our wives. Well, those are two very different loves. But we use the same word, right? We love our kids, and then we love our sports teams. It's debatable sometimes looking out at some of you guys, which one you love more. But I'm just kidding. But we use the same word. But in the Greek language, they'd use multiple words. And it's honestly kind of helpful that they had multiple words because our love is kind of nuanced. And it's important, even if you've heard this concept before, that there were 4 words used for love in Greek. It's important to hear this because this is a foundational piece of the Christian faith, is the love, specifically the kind of love that Jesus is defining. And to know what it is and to know what it isn't is very, very valuable. Okay, so you had 4 words. The first one is phileo. It's a philia. That's a friend love. We have the word Philadelphia, the city Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. That's where you love someone because you have a lot in common. They're a friend. It's a natural connection. There's somebody that you want to be connected to on a friend level. Then there's storge love. This is family love. This is like, well, we're stuck together. We love you because you're blood, and it doesn't matter, right? We're in this together. And then you have eros. That's a love that's a more sexual love. You can hear our English word erotic in it. And then you have this word called agape love, which is a totally different type of love. It's a love that is not connected to sex. It's a love that's not connected to family, and a love that's not connected to friendship. Think about that for a second. Of the things that we love, of the way that we talk about love. What kind of love is not connected to family, friendship, or sex? Agape love. That's where something from our will happens, where we're choosing to love. We're making a decision to love something and to hold it valuable. Jesus is pioneering a new kind of love. And when he says, you love as I have loved you, he says you love not in the terms of friendship, family, or sex, but unconditionally from the will. If you were to look this up in the dictionary, you would find Jesus' picture. History has taught us that this concept of agape love was virtually non-existent in the world. And almost non-existent in ancient Greek writings outside of Jesus. He literally, and his followers literally defined in history, in real time, what this love and this kind of love looks like. 1 John chapter 3, verse 16 says, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. You know, I hear the Foreigner song in the back of my head every time I read that verse. I want to know what love is. I won't sing it to you today. My voice is crackling this morning. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me, right? You guys know the song. John says, let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you where it is. It's in how Jesus loved. He defined it. Then he defined it as giving up what is valuable in his life to enrich the life of somebody else. This was seen obviously in the foot washing, which has just happened by the time he reads this new command. But it's going to be even next level, more vividly seen on the cross. Jesus says, not only am I going to demonstrate this kind of love to you, but you must do that. Did you catch that when we read the text together? That he said, by this love, by agape, the world will know that you are my followers. What he says is this, that agape is the proof of discipleship. Just sit in this for a second. Because this is just a challenging thought. That of all the things that define us and define our allegiance to Jesus, that love, not love of family, not sexual love, and not friendship type love. Love of the will that's unconditionally given, where we choose to enrich the life of somebody else by giving up something that is ours, that is the proof of discipleship. And that proof matters. I mean, evidence matters, right? I heard a story not too long ago about a lady in Portland who lost her driver's license. The police were trying to track her down, trying to give her license back, and they said, they actually sent a text, hey, this is officer and so-and-so, and we have your license. And she's like, yeah, right, you creep. Get out of here. And so then he sends a follow-up text, a selfie, and it's him in his squad car. And he's like, no, it's actually me, and I actually am an officer, and I actually do have your card. To which she says, oh my gosh, okay, I'll be down in a little bit to get it. He had to prove it to her. And it's right. She was right to be skeptical. Just like the world is right to be skeptical of anybody who says, I am a follower of Jesus. Jesus says, you know how the world will know whether you're mine or not? By the way you love. If love is present. And by the way you love other people. Not by your knowledge of truth. Not by your record or success or fail record versus temptation. Not by your leadership abilities. Not by your giving capacity. Not by your church attendance. But by your love. By the way you love. Not sexual love. Not family love. Not friendship love. But by the way you love from the will. Choosing to give of yourself to enrich the life of somebody else. In other words, what he's saying to us is that if there's no love, there's no followership. If there's no love, there's no evidence that you are my disciple. Listen, I think you know this. It doesn't take to turn on the TV every so often to get this, but that the world that we live in is a crazy place right now. And there's a lot of hate, and there's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of ugly spilling everywhere you want to look. Jesus says, let the world hate. We love. We love. That's who we are, and that's what we do. And we don't have the right to make, as his followers, to make what he says in black and white, or in this case in our Bibles, red, his words, so gray and so ambiguous. This is the test of a follower. Do you love like I have loved you? Sometimes we'll go, well, I love everybody. I love everybody, right? I've thought this before. I love you. I love everybody. But I'm reminded of a quote by C.S. Lewis that says, loving everybody in a general way may well actually be an excuse for loving nobody in a particular way. That one hurts. Loving everybody in a general way may well be an excuse for loving nobody in a particular way. Who has the evidence to convict you of being a follower of Jesus? Who in your life knows that person is a follower of Jesus because of what? Because of their love. Not because of how often you come to church, not because of how often you read your Bible, but can they identify you as a follower because of your love? Now, this can seem overwhelming. It can, because we kind of have it like a scoreboard. Sometimes it's running in our minds all the time, and we don't have to think like that. Not because of what Jesus did the next day on the cross. What he did on the cross was not only the demonstration of the kind of love that he's calling us to embody, a love as he's loved, but it's also the cover. It's also the cover for all of our missteps. So we can love like Jesus with confidence in his grace to push us through when we feel like we can't. We can love like him because his grace allows us to actually do more than we think we can, even when we think we can't. We have resurrection power. We have hope. We have the ability to experience change in our day in and day out life because of the love that God has shown us. One of the prayers, one of my earliest memories and kind of mentor conversations that I ever had in ministry was with a pastor named Rick Stedman. He was a pastor of a church out in Sacramento, California. First church I ever worked at was in Sacramento, California. We were a plant of theirs. They were going to launch a new location. And his thing was this. He used to say it all the time, taught their church, to say every day a simple prayer. God, how do you want to love me? And who do you want to love through me today? God, how do you want to love me today? And who do you want to love through me today? I got to watch firsthand how that simple prayer could transform the life of a church. It absolutely changed. It changed a church from the inside out. It changed how they operated. It changed the dynamic and the DNA of a church because they made it a point to say, we're going to love people one at a time. We're going to love people. And that will be the evidence of the change that God has been working in our lives. Years ago, when the kids were little, actually it was just Cameron and Drew at that point. Bryce wasn't even around yet, or he was really, really little, so we didn't take him. The circus came to town in Spokane. And, it was a legit circus. And I know that's a strange phrase. That's a strange qualifier, a legit circus. I don't know if there is such a thing. But it was like a legit circus. Like, it was a big one. It cost a lot of money to go to. And it wasn't just your average little carnival, little bitty one. It was a big one, okay? And so these were like high-class carnies putting this one on. Like, it was the real deal. And I'd never been to a legit circus before. So we took Cameron and we, paid through the nose and bought all the little knickknacks when we went there and just had a big old time, right? And it was legit. They had all the things, the animals and the acts and stuff, including some trapeze stuff, which blew my mind that we were able to witness. I had never witnessed anything like that in person. I'd seen it on TV and stuff, but I'd never actually witnessed it in person. And so I don't know if you ever have, but it's a bit of an anxiety trip watching it happen. These guys are just flying through the air and, doing stuff that you and I might think we could do, but we can't do. We actually can't do that. It's an incredible, the timing, the bravery, the courage, the strength. Every time they would do something, you just kind of stood back and went, wow, that's nuts. That's nuts. And the whole time you're worried about a fall, right? You're worried about somebody slipping and not being able to do it. Well, there was a net underneath, guys. Okay, there was a net. This wasn't like one of those Evel Knievel deals where we might be watching them die today. There was a net. And that net provided, in some ways, the courage to try. The courage to step out and do what might seem crazy or even impossible at the time, like to flip through the air and to go from one place to another and be caught by somebody else. But that is such a beautiful, I think, picture of what it's like to be in relationship with Jesus and to be loved by him and then be sent out. And when he says, now, as I've loved you, you go love. It's like doing life on the trapeze. There are times and situations, and maybe you're already beginning to process them, where you feel like I'm going to be asked to do some things that I'm scared to do. It's going to take courage and strength and coordination, and it's unlike anything I've ever done. You can also probably appreciate that if successful, it will provide the greatest thrill and the greatest rush you've ever experienced in your life. I'm sure the first time you go hurtling through the air, flipping, and then get caught, and you make it, and it works, and it happens, I would imagine, I can only imagine it, but I would imagine that it's got to be one of the greatest experiences and feelings that you've ever had in your life. And if you fall, and it happened one time while we were watching, where something didn't quite go right. They didn't quite connect. And one of the trapeze artists slipped through the hands, fell, bounced, and even in that bounce, they did something artistic and came back up in a pretty cool way. And within just a matter of moments, they were back in the act like nothing had ever happened. That's what you and I are being called to do. Even when we feel like we can't, we're being called to live like and love like Jesus, knowing that his death, his gift, his sacrifice has been enough for us. It's provided the net for us. Because here's what we can't do. We can't just lay on the net at the bottom. We can't just, none of the trapeze artists that we watched that day just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to lay at the bottom on the net. And if they did, and they said, here's our best, and he's laying on the net, I would probably struggle to believe the truth of that statement. Because there was no active demonstration of any way, shape, or form that was true. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 says, Christ's love compels us because we are convinced that one died for all and therefore all died. And he died for all that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. I love this verse. This is one of my favorite verses in all the Bible. Christ's love compels us. It compels us to love like he loved. Just like serving is not an optional class, neither is loving. And neither is loving specifically as he's defined it, to love from the will. Agape is a choice. It was God's choice to choose you. To choose to leave heaven, to leave glory, to leave perfection. It was his choice to step away from that and risk his life, give his life, so that he could be back in relationship with you. It was worth it to him to do it. He chose to do it. Not because you were friends. In fact, you were enemies. We were enemies with him at his time of decision. Alienated, separated. But he chose to give and to come and to sacrifice and to serve and to love. Not because we deserved it, but because he loved us so much that he'd do whatever it takes to be made right and put back in relationship with us. Choose the love that chose you. Say yes to Jesus. His invitation is as relevant today as it's ever been. He's still looking for followers. He's still inviting people to receive his love, to receive his forgiveness, and to be changed forever through the work that he did on the cross. He's also calling people to, once receiving that love, to love like he loved in the world that's around him. And I'm convinced that the more we embrace this reality, church, the more the world around us has no box to put us in. Because this is simply not common in our world. To love, but not love that's tied to sex, or love that's tied to family, or love that's tied to friendship, but to love as Christ loved, from the will, no matter what, unconditionally, because I choose to love. That's a force. That's an unstoppable force. We see it demonstrated at the cross, because that force was able to conquer sin. We see it demonstrated at the resurrection, because that force was able to conquer, that love was able to conquer death. So don't for a second think that it can't conquer all the other challenges that exist in our lives. It can, and it will. Trust him. Step into that. Respond. If you've never said yes to Jesus, I invite you to do that today. We can meet in the back at the Connect corner. You can respond via the code on the screen. If you're ready to take that step towards baptism, towards publicly identifying with Jesus, this is your time. This is your moment to do it. Again, I'd love to meet you in the back. If you've taken that step already, then this moment is about you owning the call, owning the identity as a follower of Jesus, and knowing that if the proof of my followership is love, the question then becomes, what is that love leading me to do today? What is that love compelling me to do today because I am his follower? Will you stand with me? And will you join me in a prayer? Heavenly Father, God, we give this time this moment to you, and we ask that you would move in our midst, and that God, in a way that only you can, that you would draw near, that you would center our hearts and our minds. Father, help us to give our hearts to you fully and completely. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.